Spotlighting Hawaii's leaders.
We want to bring in Governor David E.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Lieutenant Governor, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. Mayor Derek Kawakami.
Thank you so much, Senator, for being here.
Spotlighting the issues.
Where is the virus right now in our community?
How much is this overall going to cost the state?
How are you responding to the community's concerns? Talk about the level of citations that you guys are writing.
Spotlight Hawaii with Yanji Denise and Ryan Kalei Suji on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Longstrugs.
Happy Aloha Friday. Thanks so much for joining us here on Spotlight Hawaii. I'm Yanji Denise, joined by Ryan Kalei Suji. And Ryan, we are continuing our conversation about politics today with a candidate for Lieutenant Governor.
That's right. Over the past few months, really, we've been getting to know those who are vying for the second in command for the state. Of course, we know the election is coming up. And so we wanted to take a deep dive and have some conversations with those who are seeking these political offices, including those running for Lieutenant Governor. And joining us this morning is Sherry Menor-McNamara. She is a candidate for Lieutenant Governor. She also leads the Hawaii Chamber of Commerce. Good morning, Sherry. Thanks so much for joining us again.
Good morning. Happy Aloha Friday. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, great. We want to get to a lot of different topics, but first want to just get an update on how things are going with the campaign. We are about 3 months away from election. How do you see your campaign going right now as you head into this home stretch?
Oh, thank you for asking that question. Since we launched in November, it's been obviously a whirlwind traveling across the islands, but it's just been an exciting journey so far, being able to meet with so many people from the heights of Kauai to the lowest end of Hawaii Island of Na'alehu, and just meeting with different folks and hearing their stories of how they're doing, how they did in pandemic, and what we can do to support them. So it's just been such a enlightening experience, and I'm truly enjoying it. But we know it's going to be a tough race with 3 months ahead of us, and we're going to continue to pound the pavement and build the momentum that we've been having so far.
Let's talk about those conversations. What are you hearing from people who are potential voters? And what do you think the Lieutenant Governor's office, if elected to that role, what do you think you could do to help them?
Yeah, so a lot of them, when I mentioned that we need a fresh start for Hawaii, it's sort of an aha moment, and it just resonates. And they truly believe that as well, because they felt that nothing has been getting better. The cost of living, cost of doing business, it continues to skyrocket, affordable housing. And so ask ourselves, are things getting better? And many will say no. And so that's a time where we need new leadership, new ideas, new perspectives, and new direction for the state of Hawaii. And another thing that I hear is the lack of connection with the communities. And especially on the neighbor islands. And as you know, Ryan, I'm from Hilo, raised there. So my roots are strong there. And so I certainly understand the concerns of the neighbor islands and how some of these policies have been so Oahu-centric, and that they feel the neighbor islands' voice is not being heard. So I hope to bring that to the table as Lieutenant Governor.
And just to expand a little more, as we've noted on this program and talking with other candidates, as well as talking with the Lieutenant Governor himself, this is a position and a role that really is defined by the individual that is occupying it, and something that really changes and evolves as different people come into that office. What primarily do you see out of that office should you be elected into that role? Is there any specific causes that you would advocate directly for? Is there a specific issue that you would like to address? Where do you see, and how would you define that office?
Well, one, I will assure the governor, whether he or she, that will serve as a partner, work shoulder to shoulder with the governor to ensure that we can push the agenda forward collaboratively. And part of the role of the Lieutenant Governor is to be that bridge between the communities and the governor, as well as working with the state legislature, so that we can have a more collective voice in the process and move our state forward in a positive way. Another area I hope to bring to the table is my experience in the business sector, and especially as we focus on economic recovery during this time. And I feel that I am the only candidate that can bring that unique perspective, because I've had the hands-on experience, especially in the past couple of years, as many of our small businesses are still struggling. Even though the economic activity is much more robust, thankfully, many are still climbing out of that deep hole that the pandemic caused. So I hope that as Lieutenant Governor, I will work with the governor shoulder to shoulder and allow me to focus on the economic recovery efforts.
You know, one thing that Lieutenant Governor Josh Green, of course, as with his background as a doctor, was very focused on was COVID-19. He did the Safe Travels program, and he also was responsible for the initial vaccine rollout. But those measures, not necessarily the vaccine, but some of the COVID mitigation measures, like restricting crowd size and gathering size and restricting things with masks, did have somewhat of an adverse impact on businesses. Going forward, you know, we're not out of this pandemic, but COVID's still here. We're in this sort of weird hybrid situation right now. What is your position, given your experiences with small businesses who suffered, you know, under a lot of those restrictions, going forward when it comes to COVID-19 restrictions, when it comes to crowd size and mask mandates and things like that? Where do you think that the state should move on that?
Yeah, right now, obviously with the restrictions lifted, it's definitely helping our local business community. It provides a sense of confidence, a sense of hope that, okay, now we are heading in the right direction. So as we talk about the COVID still around, and then hopefully not, the restrictions come back, that's where I feel that we need to have a more robust discussion with our small businesses, our local business community, with health officials and other stakeholders to see how can we move forward, you know, as we transition to this endemic, but move forward that's much more sustainable, because I'm sure we have a lot of lessons learned in the past couple of years. And I don't think it would be right to move back to where we were if something would happen, because one, we have a more highly vaccinated population, but two, we can learn from what happened in the past and move forward by bringing more voices to the table, which we haven't seen before, but more voices together so that we can come up with more common sense collective solutions.
You know, you had a unique perspective in leading the Chamber of Commerce during the pandemic. And so we're involved in some of the discussions with some of the top leadership in the state on how to really help those who are struggling through various economic programs and packages that were released and how that money got out into the community. From your perspective in your role and what you witnessed during that time, how do you think the overall leadership handled this pandemic, be it from the county level as well as the state level? And what would you maybe do differently, say that if you were in that position during that time?
Yeah, you know, as they said, right, there was no playbook for this situation. And as a Chamber of Commerce, an advocate for a business organization that represents 80% plus small businesses across the islands, it was important for us to advocate and ensure that the government was hearing from these voices that these restrictions were having an impact on many of them, and that many of them were at the brink of closing their doors. So for us, it was about how can we partner with the government? How can we come up with creative ideas for at that moment of time to stimulate the economy, help those who have been impacted, who lost their jobs, help our small businesses. And by bringing these collective minds together, the Chamber came up with the Hawaii Restaurant Card Program. And so we floated the idea with the administration, and thankfully they supported the idea and applied $75 million of the CARES monies to this program, which, as you know, provide a 2-for-1 return. So it was a $75 million investment that turned into a $150 million stimulation to the economy, saved 2,000 plus jobs, and provided these restaurant cards to the families who lost their jobs. And so this is an example of how public-private partnerships coming together, talking about what kind of creative solutions we can come up with, that shows it works. And I hope that as Lieutenant Governor, I will bring that kind of style, that collaborative style, in bringing different stakeholders together, going out there into the communities, listening to what their ideas may be, what their concerns are, and then together coming up again with more collective and collaborative solutions to move our state forward. And that's the role I want to play as Lieutenant Governor and support the governor that way.
You know, we hear a lot about diversifying the economy, but tourism, of course, is our bread and butter. People got used for a time there to not having tourists around, and there was a sort of a relief at the beaches and all your favorite places to go. But now summer season is upon us, and the tourists are flocking back. That's great news for jobs, but there is some trepidation when we see plane loads of people landing in our islands. So, what is your sort of stance on how we better manage tourism so that we can invite guests and give them the best experience, but also to protect our resources?
Right, and it's a fair evaluation. I think at this moment in Hawaii, it's all about managing tourism. We do need to support tourism overall because it is our number one industry, and we see how many jobs it provides within the industry, as well as the number of small businesses that are impacted by the industry. So we need to continue to support the industry overall. With this said, pivoting to more of a managed tourism situation, and that's happening right now under HTA's DMAPs, the Destination Management Action Plans. And what the beauty about that is that the plan was come up by a variety of stakeholders. So it wasn't only the industry leaders, it wasn't only business people, it was community people, it was other stakeholders who are able to provide their voices into the plan, have these conversations of what could work, what may not work, and turning it into an actionable plan. And a plan for each island, because as you know, each island is different and they have their own concerns and challenges, but also opportunity areas. So the DMAPs exemplify how the public and private sectors can come together and work together with a number of stakeholders. So that could be an example of other areas as we tackle different challenges of working together on a common plan.
You know, you mentioned the Hawaii Tourism Authority, and this is an industry, or I should say an organization that continues to be debated over. In fact, the legislature currently deciding a lot of its future and how the structure of the Hawaii Tourism Authority should look. What do you believe should be the role of the Hawaii Tourism Authority? And what style of the many different amalgamations of the types of leaderships that we saw come through this organization, where do you see that entity essentially ending up and the role that it would play in Hawaii's tourism landscape?
Well, I believe Hawaii Tourism Authority still plays a pivotal role. They are the branding agency. And so far, the current leadership, the way they have reorganized and restructured is focused on managing tourism and how to move forward. So I believe they do play a role in terms of, as well as managing our marketing partners. Again, the tourism industry is an important industry for us, and we cannot simply ignore it or have a massive overhaul of it, because then it would have an overall impact on our state as a whole, from the economy to the livelihood of our families, because that is our bread and butter, so to speak. So I feel that they still have a major role, but what we do need to do is continue to work together, collaborate, communicate with the legislature more effectively, communicate with our residents, to ensure that we are listening and hearing their concerns, as well as promote Hawaii, market Hawaii, and brand Hawaii as a place of aloha, and that when visitors come here, they practice at aloha and they understand the history, the story of what Hawaii is all about.
I'm interested, you know, just in your role being in charge of the Chamber of Commerce. Also, you must hear from a lot of people that there just aren't enough workers. How do you think that we get folks back to work? You know, their unemployment is getting lower and lower, and yet everywhere you go, there's not enough tables at the restaurants, or different organizations are having to limit their hours. No matter what sector, really, it feels like there is this crunch. The Chamber of Commerce, of course, is opposed to increasing the minimum wage. There are perhaps other mechanisms to try to entice people to get back to work. But how do you think we solve this crunch that's happening now and this disconnect between businesses and employees?
It's for number one, for those industries that are really finding hard time finding workers. They may have to evaluate their business plan, the way they used to do things, the way they need to do things with limited number of workers. whether it's automating technology, whatever it is, because those positions are hard to fill. Because during the pandemic, some employees may have recognized that, okay, this is not the industry I want to be in, and seek other paying jobs out there. So that's one. Two, for those who are seeking different types of jobs in different industries, they may not have the skill sets available. So we need to invest more in reskilling, upskilling those who are seeking different opportunities. And that's happening right now, actually, at the Chamber. We are partnering with the community colleges. We launched hawaiiishiring.com in 2020 because there are massive layoffs and a number of people looking for other jobs. And even during the pandemic, while there are a number of jobs were lost, there was still a number of jobs available in different industry, whether it's healthcare, technology, and construction. But many of them did not have a skill set. So on this website, as well as working with community colleges, it's allowing them to pivot to these new opportunities, sometimes with higher paying jobs. So that's two, investing more in that workforce. And three, yes, advocating for lowering the cost of living. And that's more of a systematic problem and looking at it in a more long-term approach. And I will work shoulder to shoulder with the governor to ensure that we address the cost of living, focus on the pillars. It's not only wages, but affordable housing. It's childcare, amongst other factors that are driving up the cost of living. So working with the governor and also working with the legislature and a number of stakeholders so we can come up with a much more effective and collaborative plan.
You mentioned affordable housing, and this continues to be a hot topic every election season with numerous plans and visions of how to solve and tackle this housing issue that we have in Hawaii. What are your thoughts and any specific examples that you can provide of ideas that you believe we can finally really help some of those who are looking for a place to live here in the islands?
Well, as Lieutenant Governor, I will be there to support the governor's plan. And one way is to consult with the developers, consult with the construction companies, consult with community organizations, consult with business organizations, and also consult with the younger population because they are the ones that eventually need to have this housing. So finding out what that looks like for them. So again, as Lieutenant Governor, I want to play a role where I can convene these different stakeholders so that when the governor comes up with a more defined plan, all voices are heard. And so that we can come up with a plan that's much more inclusive and one that is doable and one that we can move forward.
You know, our state is different than others in that our governor doesn't get to choose his or her lieutenant governor. And so I'm interested to know the governor's race is still unfolding, and there are a lot of people who are watching that. Of course, we have Josh Green, Vicky Cayetano, and Kirk Caldwell as declared candidates. There, of course, are rumblings about Representative Kai Kahele and whether or not he will step into this race. Do you have any thoughts on who you hope will take that office?
That's the number one question I get when I make these rounds across the islands. But you know what? It's not about who I want to work with. It's about partnering with the governor. And that's the style I've used in my career, having a more collaborative style. But how can I best complement whoever gets elected? And I've worked with all of it in some capacity. And I know that my skill set will complement each one and fill the gap that is needed to collectively move our state forward.
In speaking specifically about your race, one of the candidates and your opponent who was seeking this office, former State Senator Jill Takuta, has decided to throw her hat into the CD2 race and is no longer seeking this race for Lieutenant Governor. How do you think that has at all impacted this overall race between what was a 5-person race now down to maybe a 4-person race for this Democratic primary?
Yeah, first of all, I have the utmost respect for Jill Takuta. I've worked with her at the legislature, and her focus has been families, and she feels passionately about it. And so do all of us. But Jill, again, I have the utmost respect for her and wish her well in the campaign. And I will always be there if she called and asked for help, information, whatever it may be, and have that kind of cordial relationship that we've had in the past. For us, even if it's down to 4, we're still going to continue in our lane and continue to do what we're doing. And that is really building a grassroots campaign, going to each island, going to the communities, having talk story sessions in garages or meet and greets at businesses or the parks. So we're just going to continue to work hard and move forward with that momentum.
You know, when you're having those meet and greets, I'm interested in what you tell folks about the personal side. We know you, of course, as the head of the chamber, and people have seen you at the legislature testifying on different bills over the years. They know you in a very strong professional context, but what do you tell people about you personally? What's something that may be surprising that you'd like people to know about you?
Yeah, thank you. I'm deeply proud of my family background. My father's parents immigrated from the Philippines, made their way to Hawaii to seek a better life for their children. My grandfather was a laborer working sugar plantations. Eventually, he got laid off, but he saved enough money to buy a papaya farm and grew everything on that farm. But what he grew put food on the table for his 7 kids. And he emphasized the meaning of hard work, the meaning of giving back, the sense of community, unstressed education, and helping one another out. So, I'm deeply proud of that side of my family. On my mom's side, my mom was born and raised in Japan. She moved to Hawaii not knowing any English, not having any friends, but somehow, and I still marvel at what she has done. She started her own small business, and 40 years later, she has it. Obviously, without its challenges, she was deeply impacted by the pandemic. She has a travel agency. But growing up, I saw my mom, the blood, sweat, tears that she put into the business and put into the business because it was all about her kids and ensuring that they could have a better life than she did. And she gave up a lot. And I'm so glad now she's fairly enjoying time for herself and just focusing on herself. But just witnessing all of that, just instilled the values of the combate. For those know that word, it's about doing your best. And since you were small, she used to always emphasize, no matter what, gambate. And then there's a saying, kodomo no tameni. It means for the sake of the children. And that's so true. I think many of us think about that, for the sake of the children. And so the marriage of those two backgrounds and the values I was raised with propelled me to run for lieutenant governor, because it is about for the sake of our children and the future generations. And if I could play a role of giving back and giving back to the communities, that's the role I want to play. And the lieutenant governor, I feel, can be that role to help, again, bridge communities with government so that we can restore trust in government and move forward.
Obviously you mentioned your upbringing on the Big Island, and one of the issues that will continue to play out as the years go on is the management of Mauna Kea and the construction of the 30-meter telescope. It continues to be a contested issue with many voices and many opinions on this matter. What are your thoughts about the construction of the 30-meter telescope, and ultimately your thoughts about the management of Mauna Kea moving forward?
Well, I support astronomy because I see the economic benefits. As you know, UHERO came out with a study that indicated more than $220 million in economic impact across the state, a little more than $100 million for Hawaii Island. It provides a number of jobs, provides opportunities for students to learn more about astronomy. And that segues to education, the educational benefits. And if you can imagine, say, reach for the stars and allowing our students to be able to learn about astronomy, provide those work-based learning opportunities so they learn more about it, get excited about it, so they stay here in Hawaii to be able to work in an astronomy field, because it is shown that Hawaii is one of the best, if not the best place to have telescopes. Obviously, it's a very deeply rooted issue, and that had a lot of pain has come out of it. I do believe University of Hawaii should still play a role. And I also think that the Native and Hawaii voice should also have a voice at the table to ensure, but simply overhauling the system right now, I might have a more reverse effect than overall positive effect for our islands. But I think if we can continue to have that conversations, hear each other out, listen to each other, and understanding what each other's perspectives are, then I think we can and start doing that more and more, because that's important in this overall equation to build a better Hawaii for all. Then, I think that's the path we have to take. And TMT is one example of what we need to be doing.
We are almost out of time, but I do want to give the viewers an opportunity to hear a final statement from you. What would you say to people as they start to, we have been paying attention to this race, but I think a lot of folks are sort of just starting to gain awareness. So what would you say to folks who are just starting to engage in this race, and why you think you're the best candidate?
Thank you so much for that question. Now, I'm a first-time candidate. I'm not a career politician. And I truly believe, based on my listening and talking story with people across the islands, that we do need a fresh start for Hawaii. Cost of living is not getting any better. Affordable housing situation is not getting any better. But here's an opportunity to bring in new leaders, to bring us to a different direction, a new direction, so that we can build a more sustainable and better Hawaii for all of us and for future generations to come. And I do bring that perspective into the conversation because I do have that business background, but I also have that background where I've worked with the legislature, I've worked with the different agencies, and I've worked with stakeholders across the islands. So I do bring that experience to the table. And my commitment to the people of Hawaii is that I will work shoulder to shoulder with the governor and ensure that the agenda that we come up with is a people's agenda. So I hope I can get you to believe in our campaign for a fresh start. And I look forward to seeing you on the campaign trail. If you want to learn more about our campaign, you can go to our website, sherry4lg.com, and that's the number 4. So mahalo to everyone watching this, and I look forward to meeting you all. And thank you to Yunji and Ryan for the opportunity to be with you.
Sherry Menor-McNamara, candidate for Lieutenant Governor, thank you so much for joining us here on this Aloha Friday. And I'm sure we will hear from you as the campaign continues to move forward and we move through this election season. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Have
Aloha.
a good weekend.
Aloha. Well, great to hear from her. And you heard her really emphasizing there, Ryan, her business background. And she really does have a unique background and brings a unique experience to this race. We've heard her in the past emphasize again and again that she's not a career politician, talking about those hilo roots, and also just years and years of working with the legislature and also working with all those small businesses kind of gives her, obviously her platform is focused on business and economic recovery. Josh Green obviously brought all that medical experience to this office. She would bring all of that business know-how.
Yeah, and you can really sense that she is trying to drum up her experience with working with the chamber, focusing on that business aspect, talking about her time during the pandemic, working with lawmakers, bringing up that restaurant card program that was started, and the idea that she says that they kind of developed and floated to the administration. But really, again, showing how she has supported small businesses during her time at the chamber. And again, her you could hear that word collaboration often spoken a lot during our conversation, really trying to beat that drum of being someone that can work with both sides of the party as well as with the legislature moving forward. We also got to know her a little bit more about her background. So it was great to kind of hear that other side as well.
Yeah, very interesting to get to know all of the candidates. And if you missed any of our past conversations, we have been doing these in-depth half hours with the lieutenant governor and some of the candidates for governor as well. So you can go back into our archive and take a look at all of those conversations as well. On Monday, we are going to be shifting our focus to tourism, something that you heard Sherry talking about as well. And the management of tourism going forward is always a conversation, especially post-pandemic. So we'll be talking to Mufi Hanneman, of course, head of the Hawaii Lodging and Tourism Association, about Bill 41, which just passed, and the impact that that could have on the tourism industry. And also just looking ahead to summer travel and what this all looks like as we navigate this, I wouldn't want to call it post-COVID, but next phase of the pandemic, if you will.
Yeah, there are a lot of concerns from those residents saying, knowing that the summer months is coming up and what the state is doing, as well as these organizations like the one that Mufi Hanneman leads, to prepare those communities throughout the state for those tourists that are expected to arrive. Also, Golden Week, a big week with the Japanese arrivals. Obviously, that continues to be something that is put on hold. We'll get an update on when that market is expected to return, as well as other efforts that are happening, and maybe his own political future. Who knows? I mean, every day someone else seems to be switching races or entering a race, and he is somebody that has run in the past. So who knows? We may have an announcement on Monday or not. We'll see. We'll look forward to that conversation and hope you have a great weekend. Until then, stay safe and aloha.
Aloha.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.